Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another interview today. I'm so excited to have another guest on. Her name is Kaltrina, and bringing her on to have a really cool conversation, getting to know her a little bit better, and chatting a little bit more about her professional experience. Kaltrina, thank you so much for accepting my invitation, for being here today.
Thank you so much, Adona. I was very, very excited when I received your invitation, and it really is an honor to be here.
Absolutely. Likewise. The pleasure's all mine. We've met each other on this amazing social media world. So I'm also personally excited to get to know you a little bit better. So let's start with the introduction. What is it that you want to tell us about your story?
All right. I think relative to many of the Albanian American community out there is my family immigrated from Kosovo to the United States back in the 1980s, and I was a very young child. I was 1 year old. Um, and much like the typical immigrant story, our life in the early years really revolved around my parents and them being able to achieve what they had come to America, for the American dream. My father left Kosovo in the early years of his medical residency, so he had already graduated medical college, and so for the next 20 years, we moved around to 7 states. And back then, it was very difficult for foreign medical graduates to obtain spots in medical residency programs in the United States. So he worked really, really hard to get where he is today and to become a surgeon. And so I really grew up with a lot of things going on, right? I was always the new kid on the block. I was a foreigner. I spoke a second language. My family had different cultures. I think many Albanian girls in the 1990s and the early 2000s can resonate with not being allowed to go over to their friend's house, or, having a lot of focus on our studies and our grades and our achievements. And so that really has given me the foundation of who I am today, watching my parents work really hard, and then creating an outgoing personality, and like you said, I reach out to people all the time to start conversations, just because that's pretty much what I've been doing my entire life.
Well, that's amazing. That foundation and your father's story and how that affected you. And you've actually moved to all those places.
Yes,
That's
yes.
amazing.
So we lived in Texas, we lived in Ohio, we lived in Connecticut, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Arizona, and New York.
So you have so many stories to share because unlike like a typical person, I mean, I've only moved to just Staten Island, one of the boroughs of New York, and Brooklyn. So I
Yeah.
can share that. And I always say 15 years were in Tirana, so I have 15 years there, and then 22 years here. But then a lot of times I feel like I don't have a lot of variety. But in your case, you have like so much experience about living in different places.
Yeah, absolutely. And each state is very, very different. And we do see that even with our electoral college map, right? And you can see the diversity from county to county. And I went to college in Richmond, Virginia. But as a kid, people would ask me where was my favorite state, and it would actually be Texas. Texas really for us was a great time. I was very young, fourth and fifth grade. We had a beautiful home. My parents had great jobs, and it was really, really family oriented. We could walk down the street. We went to our neighborhood swimming pool. Beautiful Albanian community there, which we know that Houston has one of the largest Albanian communities in the United States. So we really, really enjoyed our time there, and I still think of Texas, very warmly.
Formally, yeah, because it's the one that felt most like family, seems like out of everything.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So, Katrina, tell me a little bit about you mentioned achievement. Your father worked really hard to be where he is today. You mentioned he was a surgeon.
Right.
So, what was your professional? So, did you go to college?
Yes.
What was your
So I
journey at that level?
so what's very interesting is that I moved from Connecticut to Virginia after my sophomore year in high school. So can you imagine, being a high school student in, a very particular age of and stage of puberty, and that kind of awkward stage where you're finally like starting to discover, who you are and who you want to be. And so we moved to Virginia at the end of my sophomore year, and I had a very interesting teacher for U.S. government class, and we had to give a end of the year presentation, and I decided to do, I think Albanians only think about like war and victory, right? So I did genocides in the 1990s, and I did what I thought and think to be a fantastic PowerPoint presentation about obviously Bosnia. Kosovo at that time was just ending. It was my senior year in high school, and I also did the genocides of Rwanda and in Africa. So at the end of that presentation, my teacher said to me, you should think about government. You're an excellent public speaker. And you had everybody else's presentations were about legalizing marijuana and like alcoholism, like typical high school stuff, right? And here I was doing genocides, in the 1990s. And with his statement, I literally changed my direction. I had thought about going to medical school previous to that, obviously, because, my father's influence in my life. And I ended up going to college for international relations and political science. I completed my bachelor's in international relations. And very interestingly enough, when I finished college, my parents had then gone on to move to Arizona. So I moved after college, I moved out with them. I got a job at a temp agency, which I highly recommend temp agencies as a way to kind of get yourself started if you don't know the direction that you're interested in going in. And I worked at a major national call center that provided contracts for anything from American Express to Medicare. Medicare was just rolling out its Plan B at that time. And, we were responsible for this. I was actually in the HR department for the call center. And what really resonated with me, Alona, and we know this because we have family members in Kosovo and Albania, I would look at these people who were there on a job interview. They weren't dressed well. They weren't prepared. They, very simply, were taking advantage of the fact that we were desperate enough to hire them. Mm-hmm. I thought to myself, oh my gosh, if these jobs were available in Kosovo and in our area, what we could do with that. And I, there's also a little bit of a personal side to this story, which, we won't get into, but I literally picked up and I moved to Kosovo. So in 2006, I graduated college in 2005. In 2006, I moved to Kosovo. Mm-hmm. And that's really where my professional development blossomed. And it's very interesting for us because we hear the opposite, right? People come from there here. When I went there, I was, met with cynicism. What are you doing here? What do you want? Why are you working here? I can't believe you came, da da da. But some of the work that I was able to do in Kosovo, my first job was actually with a market research company, and it was locally owned and operated. But all of our major contracts were with the international development community. So I was working with USAID, with UNDP, with UNICEF, with other organizations in the area, Save the Children. I mean, you name it, they were there. And a lot of it was also like cross-border activity from, Kosovo into Macedonia, some trade, some economic development. And that's really the experience that has, really given me a lot of foundation. I learned data analysis skills. I learned public speaking. I learned presentation skills. I learned research writing. I already had a significant writing experience because of my bachelor's degree in international relations. So every exam was a paper. But when you're writing for a business goal, your writing changes. And so that's really, I spent 4 years with that company, and I'm grateful for the time that I spent with them. We were able to liaison with ambassadors and chiefs of staff and big players in the international community. So my degree of professionalism increased quite significantly during that time.
Wow, that's really cool. But what made you move there? What made you go from the US to Kosovo?
Love.
Oh, okay, okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So I went after someone.
Okay, nice, nice,
Yeah.
cool. So that's really impressive that you actually built a lot of those skills back there in a diverse environment from the United States. So now that you're here, you can bring all that experience with you.
Yeah.
So tell me how your journey progressed from there.
So we spent 7 years in Kosovo in its entirety, and I got married. I had my first child, and then in 2014 we decided to come back to the United States. So I've only been back in the U.S. for 6 years, and let me tell you, it's not easy coming from overseas and getting a job. Even though that I had an American diploma, I wrote and spoke English fluently. Um, I went on 14 interviews
Hmm.
until I got my first job when we came back to the United States.
Mhm.
Um, it was very difficult and challenging, and I almost felt like I was an immigrant all over again. Um, we were very lucky that we had some family support. I literally, my uncle and his wife live in Brooklyn. We lived in the Bronx at the time. I would take the train, I would take my daughter, take the train to Brooklyn from the Bronx, drop her off at my uncle's wife's house, and then go to the city on a job interview. And then
Mm.
I would come back to get her and come back up to the Bronx. So one thing that I really am passionate about is that no matter what it is you want, you have to go and get it. You have to work really hard to go and get it. The job that I got at Westchester Medical Center, you're gonna die laughing when I tell you this story, was also available at Lincoln Hospital in the Bronx. I had applied just like everybody else, and I was waiting and waiting for a response, and that wasn't good enough for me. So I took the train to Lincoln Hospital, and I went up to the security guard and I said, I need to go talk to someone in this department. The security guard would not let me in, obviously. I probably wouldn't let myself in today.
Mhm.
And I literally begged and pleaded, and I went a couple of times, and the only thing that they would do was send me to HR. And I knew in my heart that this was my dream job. I knew that I had to get it, right? So I went back 3 times. And twice I would fill out the paperwork at HR and they would tell me that they would call me, et cetera, et cetera. I just so happened to Google the position, and the same exact position, because it's actually required if you're verified by the state, the same exact position showed up here at Westchester Medical Center where I am today. And I applied. I got a response within days. I had an interview in the week. They offered me the job at the first interview, and 5 years later, I'm still at Westchester Medical Center.
And what is your position there?
So now I am the practice administrator for the Department of Medicine. I run 5 private practices that are associated with the hospital.
Wow, that's really cool. But what stood out to me is that you actually felt like you needed to get that job and your persistence of
Yeah.
going 3 times. And a lot of the coaching that I do, especially with my clients, is you have to keep going. You have to be very persistent. When you're job searching, it's like a full-time job,
It is.
because you're in competition. You have to know how to position yourself and speak about your value and your skills if you get that lucky to actually get the interview.
Right.
And you mentioned that you went through so many interviews in order to get that position, but a lot of times, yes, it is that journey that you have to do. It
Right.
doesn't mean that it's not possible, but just like anything else, anything that it's worth having, you have to go through the journey. And I think that's, that's what stood out to me from your story. It's like you stayed persistent and you're like, no, I'm going to get it. And the universe worked on your favor, because now we know there's a universe and energies, and they line up when you're actually
Yes.
taking action. And you took
Yes.
action, and you actually are where you are, and it happened to be the place that you work at now. But since we're speaking of job interview, this is a really good topic, and I'm sure a lot of the audience would be interested in it. So I know you also worked in HR, and you saw the level of maybe preparation for a job interview. What are some tips that you would give for someone that is being called on a job interview? How should they prepare for that?
So they should prepare for an interview like it's an exam, like it's a test.
Yeah.
You need to know everything about that company. If it's possible for you to know who you're interviewing with beforehand, that's great. You need to look at those individual profiles, see what they're doing, if they've published any articles, if they've conducted an interview, right? Um, I actually had been on one interview. The individual that I interviewed with had did like a presentation, and in that um, uh, piece, I found out that he really liked a sports team. I brought it up in conversation.
Yes.
And he actually, was like, "Oh, you saw my interview." And I said, "Yes, I did." And I have been in when I interviewed for my first position at Westchester Medical Center, I came up with what I would then find out to be every training program that I would end up participating in when I got the role. So research the company, research the role, look at that role at other companies so that you can have a sense of what the expectation is, what the broad scope of responsibilities would be. um, Really just, I showed up to interviews with printouts, with pieces of paper, and I would show them, look, this is whatever it was. And I know for a fact, I impressed people very much on how, how much I was prepared. I recently saw something, and I'm sure this is going to resonate with a lot of your audience. Sometimes you don't get a job because there was something very specific that the employer was looking for. And maybe you didn't say it, maybe you didn't express it. It doesn't mean that you are not valuable or that you don't have something to offer an employer. It just means that they were looking for something else. I am actually incredibly grateful for the 14 interviews that I went on because it ultimately led me to the job that I got and this place that I am at now.
Yeah.
We have a little bit of fatalism in our culture. And we think that, God has written everything out for you and you're just going to sail it. Yes, that's true. But it is up to you to pursue everything that you want in this world. And I really truly believe that that dedication and that determination is really what fuels someone's success.
Absolutely. That's just a journey. I call it a journey. It's meant to be. And that's exactly what my question was going to be to you about all those 14 job interviews. What did you learn about yourself? Because you learn so much about yourself in those interviews. And a lot of the times, the people that I coach, it's like, I went to one, I went to two. I'm like, great. What was the feedback? Listen to that. Listen to the feedback. What was the feedback they told you? You got to be very observant, because it's that one piece of information that maybe if you improve on your next one, that
Right.
might get you the job. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So there's a couple of things that I learned. The one thing that you probably, laugh with is that um, I enjoyed talking about myself. I honestly did. I think when you're in an interview, it is one of the rarest moments that you are literally allowed to speak about your accomplishments. Like
Yes.
without any sort of judgment or, any sort of weird looks or anything. You're encouraged to do that. And so I learned how to change, take my accomplishments and the things that I'd experienced and connect them to the position that I was applying with. And that really takes some skills, right? And I'm not saying that I'm the most skilled person at that, but really I was able to say, oh wow, and a lot of times everything is really organic. You learn to also feed off of the person who's interviewing. Read their body language, read the way that they're looking at you. And you actually did a piece on emotional intelligence really recently.
Mhm.
And this is something that I personally and professionally have focused on a lot in the last couple of years, because that ability, and I read a book and it really, and we should be able to resonate with this because, the Albanian eagle is our, mascot. But when you have a skill of emotional intelligence, you are raising up yourself above the scenario, having that eagle eye view, and being able to read other people's motivations, their presence, their strategy. And so this is just an interview is just another opportunity for you to hone in on those skill sets.
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's so much of that related to emotional intelligence in interviews that you have to be able to be intuitive. You just have to develop that, because if you do develop that, and I did develop that in my work as a leader as well, because you're working with people, so you always have
Yes.
to see beyond the emotion, the behavior, because there's always something lying underneath to why we do what we do. So if you could be really good at studying that on an interview, and I always say observe more than you speak a lot of times. If you're being asked questions, it's amazing because you have the spotlight on and you could definitely speak about that. But a lot of it, pick up the body language, see the energy of the interviewer, and go with go with that. Make it a conversation. I always say, because it's so much more comfortable, just like this interview. It could be such maybe a nerve-wracking setup, but because we're just having a conversation, you lose track of time. And those are the best interviews, because then you really can be yourself. Because a lot of the times people fear how I will show up, what will the other person think of me, all this noise we have in our brain. But
Yeah.
if you just come out of yourself and focus on what is the problem I can solve for this company, and if you already done all the homework that you explained, which is so important, doing the research, then
Yes.
you just come into the table with, here's my skills, here's what I've learned, here's how I think I can fix this
Yes.
or that, and which is why I'm the best candidate, because this is what I've done in the past. And maybe you don't have to do 100% whatever they're asking you, but you have to be able to relate it. And
Right.
that becomes communication. That's your communication skills. And that's
Right.
why I always say, a lot of people work so hard. I'm like, you don't have to work hard. You just have to know how to communicate what you already do and your work. That
Yes.
is so, so much, much more important than anything else. And it's not always the best people that get the jobs. It's the one that can actually, talk about themselves and really tell the
Yes.
employees how they can actually help them.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's definitely a skill to learn. Kaltrina, I have about 5% on my laptop for the interview, but I really enjoyed our conversation so far. So tell me a little bit about, I've seen on social media you also recently had some personal transformations with your health. Tell me a little bit
Yes.
about that. I was very curious. I think we
Yes. Like many mothers, once you have kids, you struggle with the responsibilities and the stress, and either you don't lose the baby weight during the pregnancy or you gain the weight after the pregnancy. So I did a little bit of both. A friend of mine at work was doing this program called Optavia, and she approached me actually around this time last year, and and she told me about it, and I immediately was like turned off by it. I was like, oh no, I'm not doing that. Well, 2 months later, I called her up and said, I'm doing it. And it has literally transformed my life because I have been able to lose 45 pounds and I want to lose a few more. And during my journey, I realized that I'm actually particularly focused on, approaching Albanian women because if you look at our mothers, they all look the same. They're a size 14. They're a size 14, 16. They have hypertension. They're borderline diabetes. They have, history of stroke and heart attack in their families. They're not taking care of themselves. And I realized, I said, we have to change this. We don't have to become our mothers. Um,
So
and I
yeah,
just,
more than, because I would just want to like clarify that more than the way they look is the way they feel, all the
yes.
problems that are related, because that's
So
what's more important.
absolutely. And those are significant medical conditions that you wouldn't wish upon anyone, right? And so when you look at the generations before us and they have rheumatoid arthritis and they have difficulty walking and knee pain and then there's a knee replacement surgery in their future, really that is taking them on a trajectory that isn't good, right? And if we don't take care of ourselves now at this age, we're going to go down that path as well. So I became a coach for Optavia, and my role is to support and encourage people during their transformation. And the best part about our program is that it is not a fad diet. This is not like you're going to lose a bunch of weight and then you're going to not be able to keep it up. So you're going to gain it back. This program really digs deep into what is making, if you're a binge eater, and I'll be really honest, I was 9 o'clock at night, the kids would be in bed and I would open up that refrigerator. I'd open up our pantry, Oreos, chips, you name it. And I would be like, oh my God, all the everything that I had to do during the day, I'm so overwhelmed. And then I would eat, right? Eat.
Emotional eating, I know.
Yes. And
Yes.
so this program talks about challenging that moment and saying, wait a second, I have a choice here. Eating that food is not going to change the stress at work or my relationships at work or, the running around after the kids, basketball practice and this practice and that practice. And I have also really recentered and said, Kaltrina is really important here. I am investing in myself. I am investing in my future. I'm allowing myself to have more energy, to be healthy. My BMI, body mass index, was almost 30. Like, that's obese. And we really need to stop and say to ourselves, okay, we can do better than this. And whether it's through a program like Optavia or something else, find what works for you, but make yourself healthy, because literally your kids and your families are depending on you. And that we know for sure.
Mhm. No, absolutely. I mean, when I saw your transformations, and I'm thinking about it myself because, especially with everything going on lately, definitely emotional eating is what's happening, and that's why we're not feeling the way that we want to
Right.
feel, and the energy level. A lot of times, everything is connected, and it's
It
not just
is. It
about the
is.
health; it's also like about the energy level and everything like that. So, well, what does the program entail? Is it things you have to eat? Give me a little bit
Yeah,
more
so
details about
so
it.
there's the biggest pillar of the program is obviously that support. And so, a coach and that role that the coach plays in kind of supporting you through your journey. The second part is nutrition. So what we've done, or what the company has done, is created a meal supplement plan, which we call fuelings. So during the course of the day, you eat every 3 hours, 5 fuelings. And I leave them in my drawer. So I have a big drawer of them. So they can be anything from, like, honey mustard sticks to cinnamon sticks to a brownie, a chocolate shake, a soup. And so you eat 5 of those during the day. And then at some point during the day, you eat something that we call a lean and green, which is a set ounce of protein and then a set ounces of vegetables. each protein is the number of ounces for the protein is determined by the type of protein. So if you're having grilled chicken, you can have 7 ounces of grilled chicken. If you're having a steak, you can have a 5 ounce steak. And so we lay that all out for you and we say, okay, you followed this program. And let me tell you, Alona, the first day I did this, it was so hard. It was so hard because, you know, you're a mother, you're making breakfast for the kids. What do? You eat their leftovers.
Get tempted, yes.
Oh my goodness, my first day when I took my son's waffles leftovers, right? Like half a waffle, 1.5 waffle, I realized I ate this not realizing I was eating this. So not to throw it away, I would pop it in my mouth. Not to throw away my daughter's cereal. Okay, I'll eat a few of her spoonfuls and rushing out of the house, right?
Mindless eating. I know what it is.
Yeah. So when I realized what extra junk I was throwing into myself, no wonder I was almost at 200 pounds. Like what was I thinking, you know? But the next morning when I got on the scale and I dropped 2.5 pounds
in a day.
So the first week you lose a lot of weight. After that you taper off, then the average is about 2 pounds a week, right? How much you dedicate yourself to the plan is the results that you are going to get. I can't stress this enough. Like, it works. Stick to it. It works. And this program is really focused on getting you where you want to be. After that, it teaches you how to reintroduce starches, reintroduce carbohydrates into your daily life. And during this time, I've said to myself, wow, I don't need to have the cupcake that's at the conference. You know, I don't need to have the Danish that they've put out with the coffees in the morning. I've already fueled my body. And I think that's probably why they call it fuel, right? Can you put 100 gallons of gas into your car? No, you can't. But we do that to ourselves on a daily basis. We're flooding our bodies with extra stuff that we don't need. And it's really like, it's, you know, burdening us physically, emotionally, because when you're not in a happy place physically, we know what it's like when you look in the mirror. You're just like, I give up. So then you go eat again.
Yeah, it's a bad cycle to get into.
It's a bad cycle. And, you know, I'm doing this because I'm passionate about the way that this program can change individual lives. And like, really, like, I'm after everyone's success. You can do it. You can be your best self. And this is just another way to become that person.
Cool. And also because you had the results, I think a lot of people with programs, it's like they don't know which one will work, or
Yes.
you know, don't have that trust. So I think because you are walking the talk,
yes,
it's definitely the biggest example of that it works and it's healthy and it's fueling you based on the way that it is.
Oh my God, it's incredible. I'm telling you, if anyone, you know, wants to do it or is interested in doing it, you are going to, it's like winning the lottery. I want to go on top of a mountain and just like tell everybody about it, because I know what it's like when you're just, you know, you can't get out of it. Like you said, it's just a cycle and you just keep going, and the aftermath is devastating.
Absolutely. Well, you got me motivated. I've been looking for something that I can do mindlessly, because I focus so much on the business, especially us with, I mean, moms, everyone's like all over the place nowadays.
Yes.
So if you can have someone pre-plan your meals, for me, that's what would work, because then I know I'm eating healthy, no guilt, and I'm doing something good for myself. So solving that problem is really, really important, and you're also getting the benefits of that.
Yeah.
So, Kaltrina, I have 1%. This
all right.
Amazing. Thank you so much for all the information that you've given so far. So if anyone would be more interested in just getting to know more about you, or where they can find you with the program, where is it that they can find you? I've also
so I'm on Facebook, Kaltrina Latifi Osmani. I'm on LinkedIn. You know, you can find me when you post this. I'll enter my contact details. Thank you so much for this opportunity. I have loved every second of it. I am so grateful for people like you and the work that you are doing, especially for Albanian women, we have so much potential. You know, we can be more than just pop stars and singers. We need to take the business world by storm. And I know that many of us are out there very successful, and many of us need to come forward. So I encourage you that if you're in a place of success, reach out to this beautiful woman who's sitting in front of me. Tell us your story. We will benefit greatly if we hear how you achieved what you've achieved.
Well, thank you so much, Kaltrina. You're truly an inspiration. I'm so glad to have met you and known you on this personal level. It seems personal, even though it's through Zoom.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But we'll hear from each other again, I'm
Yes,
sure.
yes. I
So
look
much for your
forward to
time.
it.
We'll definitely see each other in another platform or on.
Yes,
You know.
absolutely.
All
Very
right.
exciting.
Take care.
All
Thank you
right,
again.
you too,
I'll
you
see you.
too. Good night.